Before we begin, a quick note. This story explores themes of profound existential despair and the psychological impact of an unusual condition. Listener discretion is advised. The screech of tires was like a banshee's final scream, tearing through the humid night air. Metal shrieked against metal, a symphony of destruction echoing off the silent, rain-slicked highway. Arthur Vance felt the sickening lurch, the violent impact, the world dissolving into a kaleidoscope of shattered glass and twisted steel. His seatbelt bit into his shoulder, then snapped. His head slammed forward, a blinding flash of white light, and then nothing. Absolute, profound, blissful nothing. For a split second, a single perfect split second, Arthur felt it. The release. The end. The sweet, sweet oblivion he had chased for so long. He smiled, an internal, secret smile of triumph. It was over. Finally. Then he coughed. A choked, ragged gasp that ripped through the silence, pulling him back from the precipice he'd so desperately lunged towards. His eyes fluttered open, gritty and disoriented. He was upside down, dangling precariously by one foot, the mangled remains of his sedan wrapped around him like a deadly cocoon. Rain splattered against the shattered windshield, mixing with the acrid scent of gasoline and burnt rubber. He heard the distant wail of sirens growing closer. He heard the frantic shouts of other drivers who had stopped, their voices a muffled buzz through the ringing in his ears. Slowly, painfully, he pulled himself upright, his limbs protesting with dull aches rather than the searing agony he expected. He touched his forehead. No blood, just a faint tenderness. His ribs, which should have been crushed, felt merely bruised. He pushed open the crumpled door, a defiant groan of metal accompanying his escape. Stepping out onto the wet asphalt, he looked at the wreckage. His car, a silver Honda he'd bought barely a year ago, was now an unrecognizable heap. The front end was completely obliterated, the engine block presumably somewhere in the ditch. The driver's side, where he had been, was crushed inward, a testament to the force of the collision. He should be dead. He should be a mangled mess, barely identifiable. Instead, he stood there, soaking wet, shivering slightly from the cold rain, but utterly, infuriatingly alive. A woman, her face pale with shock, rushed towards him. "Oh my God! Are you okay? I saw the whole thing. That truck just T-boned you. How are you standing?" Arthur just stared at her, his expression a mask of weary resignation. "I'm fine," he mumbled, the lie tasting like ash in his mouth. He wasn't fine. He was far from it. He was a man trapped in a waking nightmare, a prisoner in his own flesh. He was Arthur Vance, and he couldn't die. It had started subtly years ago. A nasty fall down a flight of stairs, a broken arm, a concussion. Standard stuff. But the recovery was too fast. Days, not weeks. Then came the illness that swept through his office, laying everyone low with a brutal flu. Everyone but Arthur. He'd felt a slight chill, a tickle in his throat, and then it was gone. He brushed it off as a strong immune system. But the incidents grew more severe, more frequent, and increasingly impossible to explain. A terrible kitchen accident where he'd severed an artery, bleeding profusely, only to find the wound closing itself, stitching itself back together within minutes, leaving barely a scar. A fire in his apartment building, where he'd been trapped, inhaling smoke, suffering burns that should have been third degree, yet woke up in the hospital a few hours later, perfectly healed, much to the baffled amazement of the doctors. They'd called it a miracle, a medical anomaly. Arthur called it a curse. He remembered the first time he truly understood. It was a cold, lonely night about 10 years ago. He was in his late 20s, feeling the weight of a life that had become monotonous, predictable, and utterly joyless. He'd been struggling with a deep, silent depression, the kind that whispers insidious thoughts in the dark. He'd driven out to a secluded spot, a cliff overlooking the ocean, the wind whipping at his hair. He'd stood there for a long time, staring into the churning abyss below, and then he jumped. The fall was terrifying, exhilarating. The impact with the water should have shattered every bone in his body, ripped him apart. He felt the cold shock, the crushing pressure, the darkness closing in. And then he was floating. Not struggling, not drowning, just floating. He drifted to shore, gasping, coughing up seawater, but otherwise unscathed. His terror turned to confusion, then to a chilling, dawning horror. He tried again, and again, each attempt more desperate, more elaborate, more violent than the last. Poisons that should have stopped his heart within seconds, only to be purged from his system like a minor indigestion. Gunshots that passed through him, leaving only temporary holes that sealed themselves shut, scar tissue forming at an impossible speed. He'd walked in front of trains, jumped from skyscrapers, submerged himself for hours in icy lakes. Each time the result was the same: an excruciating, humiliating failure. He would wake up perfectly whole, often in a hospital bed, baffling doctors who could find no explanation for his miraculous survival, or worse, in some alleyway alone, with nothing but the clothes on his back and the crushing weight of his continued existence. The desire to die wasn't born of fleeting sadness or a moment of weakness. It was a profound existential weariness. He had seen too much, felt too much, endured too much. The world was a beautiful, terrible place, and he was exhausted by it. He missed the peace of finality. He missed the idea that there was an end, a closure, a release from the relentless grind of living. He watched friends and family grow old, sicken, and pass away, leaving him behind, forever young, forever adrift. He'd seen his parents die, his grandparents, his beloved dog, Max. Each loss was a fresh wound, but for him there was no healing. Only the accumulating scar tissue of grief that never truly faded because he was still here, always here. He couldn't form lasting relationships. How could he? How could he explain why he never aged? Why a sudden horrific accident left him with nothing but a scratch? He'd watched women he loved grow older, their faces etched with the passage of time, while his remained unchanged, a constant reminder of his unnatural state. He'd seen the suspicion, the fear, the eventual distance that grew between them, so he stopped trying. He became a ghost, moving from city to city, changing identities, living a transient life to avoid detection, to avoid the questions, to avoid the inevitable heartbreak. The money ran out quickly. He couldn't hold down a job for long. An office injury, a sudden illness, a need for a new identity, all required him to disappear. He lived on the fringes, taking odd jobs, always disappearing before anyone noticed anything strange. He knew he was a walking paradox, a biological impossibility, and a threat to the comfortable assumptions of humanity. If anyone found out, truly found out, he didn't know what would happen. Would he be studied, tortured, worshipped, imprisoned? None of those options appealed. He just wanted to cease. Tonight's crash was his most extreme attempt yet. He'd spent months planning it, meticulously calculating the speed, the angle, the impact zone. He'd targeted a stretch of highway known for heavy truck traffic, ensuring the other driver would be a massive 18-wheeler, guaranteeing catastrophic force. He'd even chosen a rainy night, hoping the slick roads would add to the unpredictability, to the finality. But here he was, standing in the rain, listening to the sirens draw closer, watching the paramedics extract the truck driver from his cabin, a man who, unlike Arthur, was truly injured. Guilt, a familiar companion, twisted in his gut. He hadn't meant to harm anyone else. He never did. His plans were always designed to minimize collateral damage, to make only himself the victim. Yet, here was another casualty of his desperate quest for oblivion. He saw the flashing lights of an ambulance, an emergency vehicle pulling up. A young paramedic, a woman with bright, alert eyes and a serious expression, jogged towards him. "Sir, are you the driver of the Honda? My name is Jessica. Can you tell me what happened? Are you hurt anywhere?" Her voice was gentle, professional. Arthur looked at her, at the genuine concern in her eyes, and felt a pang of something he hadn't felt in a long time, a flicker of connection. He imagined telling her the truth, watching her kind eyes widen, then narrow with disbelief, then harden with fear. He imagined the questions, the tests, the inevitable confinement. I think I blacked out." He lied smoothly, a lifetime of practice making it effortless. "The truck came out of nowhere. I feel a little shaken, but I think I'm okay." Jessica's brow furrowed. She scanned him quickly, her gaze lingering on his perfectly intact clothes, the lack of visible injury. "You're incredibly lucky, sir. This looks like a miracle. Can you step over to the ambulance? We need to check you out." Arthur nodded, allowing himself to be led. He knew the routine. They'd check his vitals, find them perfectly normal. They'd ask him questions, and he'd give vague, forgettable answers. They'd release him, bewildered, and he'd disappear into the night once more. Another failed attempt added to the long, miserable list. But as he sat on the edge of the ambulance, the rain still falling, the chaos of the accident unfolding around him, a new thought began to surface. A dangerous, exhilarating thought. What if he wasn't looking for the right way to die? What if the answer wasn't in more force, more poison, more height? What if the answer was in understanding why he couldn't die? What if, somewhere out there was someone else like him? Or someone who knew the secret? He'd spent years trying to end it, but what if he needed to spend time trying to understand it? To unravel the curse that bound him to this endless, unwanted existence? He looked at his hands, hands that had survived countless horrors, hands that were destined to remain smooth, unwrinkled forever. A chilling realization settled over him. Maybe the key to his peace wasn't in seeking death, but in seeking the truth. And for the first time in a very long time, that thought, however terrifying, felt like something new. Something worth living for, if only for a little while longer. He had to find out. He had to. His apartment, usually a sterile monument to his own endless tedium, suddenly felt different. The air was charged, not with the usual static of despair, but with a crackling energy of purpose. Centuries had passed since he'd felt anything akin to true motivation, a drive that wasn't merely a desperate escape from existence. He walked to the wall, a blank canvas in his minimalist living space, and stared at it as if it held the answers. But the answers weren't on the wall. They were buried deep within him, in the countless fragmented memories of a life that refused to end. Where did one even begin to investigate an impossible existence? He couldn't consult scientists, not without revealing himself and becoming a specimen. He couldn't confide in anyone. Trust was a luxury he'd lost access to long ago, if he'd ever truly had it. No, this journey, like all the others, would be solitary. But this time the solitude was a tool, not a torment. He closed his eyes, forcing his mind to sift through the vast, overwhelming archives of his past. Not the grand historical events he'd witnessed, not the rise and fall of empires, but the subtle personal moments. The times he should have died but didn't. He needed a starting point, a thread to pull. A memory sharp and cold as a bayonet, cut through the fog of ages. The year was 1862. The place, a blood-soaked field in Maryland, near Antietam Creek. He was a young man then, barely out of his teens, fighting for the Union. A bullet had ripped through his chest. A searing pain quickly followed by the crushing darkness he'd so desperately wished would be final. He remembered the face of the medic, a kind, weary man named Thomas Miller, bending over him, his breath misting in the cool autumn air. He remembered the whispered words, "He's gone, poor boy." He remembered the rough blanket pulled over his face, the sound of retreating footsteps, and then nothing. Until he woke, hours later, the wound already closing, the pain a dull ache, the realization a horrifying, familiar dread. He had been left for dead, buried in a mass grave, only to claw his way out, a ghost among the truly departed. That was it. That was the anchor. Not the first time he'd realized his condition, but one of the most definitive. A specific place, a specific time, a specific name. It was a tangible starting point in a life defined by the intangible. He spent the next few days in a quiet frenzy, a kind of focused energy he hadn't felt in centuries. He shed his current identity, a simple, unassuming name he'd been using for the past decade, and meticulously crafted a new one. David Miller. A distant relative of the medic, perhaps. Someone with a legitimate, if slightly arcane, interest in Civil War history. He booked a flight to Washington, D.C., then a rental car north. His destination? The National Archives, and then smaller, regional historical societies scattered across Maryland. He knew the drill. Blend in. Ask the right questions, but not too many. Look for the anomalies, the overlooked details. The National Archives were a labyrinth of hushed whispers and rustling papers. He spent days poring over dusty regimental records, casualty lists, and field diaries. He found Company K, 12th Massachusetts Infantry. His company. He found the date of the skirmish, September 17, 1862. The details were sparse, as was often the case with minor engagements. A few lines about heavy losses, a brief mention of a Confederate flanking maneuver. He searched for Thomas Miller, the medic. His name appeared on a roster, then again in a later report, commended for his bravery. Miller had survived the war, eventually settling in Ohio. A dead end for direct contact, but a confirmation of the memory. What he was looking for wasn't in the official records. It was in the absence of records. He remembered being pronounced dead. Yet, his name wasn't on the casualty list. He wasn't listed as missing or deserted. He simply wasn't there. It was as if he had never existed in that company K, despite fighting alongside them for months. A phantom soldier. This wasn't just an oversight. The records were meticulous, even for the common soldier. Every man was accounted for one way or another. To be completely erased, to leave no trace of being present at such a significant battle, was a glaring anomaly. It suggested a deliberate act of omission. But by whom? And why? His search led him to a small, unassuming historical society in a quiet Maryland town, not far from the old battlefield. The building was a charming, albeit decaying, relic of the late 19th century, filled with the scent of old paper and forgotten stories. Inside, a young woman with bright, inquisitive eyes and a wild mane of auburn hair sat behind a cluttered desk. Her name tag read, Emily Carter, Archivist. Emily looked up as he entered, a welcoming smile on her face. "Can I help you, sir?" Her voice was clear, enthusiastic. "Yes, perhaps," he replied, his voice carefully modulated, betraying none of the centuries of weariness. "I'm researching a distant relative, a soldier in the 12th Massachusetts during the Civil War. I'm trying to find any local records, perhaps even personal letters or memoirs, related to the skirmish near Antietam on September 17, 1862. Emily's eyes lit up. "Oh, the Battle of Antietam. Fascinating. We have quite a collection of local histories and personal accounts. Most of the main engagements are well documented, but the smaller skirmishes often yield the most interesting personal stories." She gestured towards a row of shelves. "Follow me. Do you have a name for your relative?" "His name was David Miller," he said, using his new alias, a slight twist of irony. "He was a medic, I believe, with Company K. He needed to keep his story consistent with the one he'd found in the National Archives." Emily led him to a section dedicated to local Civil War history. "Miller, you said? Let's see. We have a few diaries from soldiers in the 12th Massachusetts Company K. Here we go." She pulled out a brittle leather-bound journal. This belonged to a Private Samuel Davies. He was present at Antietam. Might have some details. He took the journal, his gloved fingers, a habit he'd developed to avoid leaving traces, or to hide the subtle calluses of 1,000 trades, carefully turning the yellowed pages. Davies' handwriting was cramped but legible. He read through entries detailing camp life, marches, the fear before battle. Then the entry for September 17, 1862. Asterisk, the day was hell. Fire and smoke. Lost good men. Saw Corporal Peterson go down, and young Thomas with him. Medic Miller did his best, but there was too much. Saw him trying to revive a boy no older than myself, shot through the chest. Miller shook his head, pulled the blanket. Another one gone. God help us all. Asterisk. He paused. Young Thomas. Not David. The journal entry confirmed Thomas Miller was present, and that he had indeed pronounced someone dead. But the name wasn't his. And the detail of being shot through the chest matched. But young Thomas? He had been called David back then. It was a common name. But Thomas? He looked up at Emily, who was patiently waiting, sifting through some other documents. "This is very helpful, thank you, Emily." He pointed to the name in the journal. "It mentions a young Thomas. Did Private Davies often refer to soldiers by their first names?" Emily leaned in, peering at the page. "Oh yes, quite common in personal diaries. Soldiers often formed close bonds. He might have been a new recruit, or someone Davies was particularly fond of." She paused, her brow furrowing slightly. "Though it's interesting. I don't recall seeing a Thomas on the official Company K roster for that period. Not one who died at Antietam, anyway. We have a few Thompsons and a Thomas, but he survived the war." His heart, which hadn't truly beaten with urgency in centuries, gave a strange, almost imperceptible flutter. "You don't? Are you certain?" "Well, I'd have to double-check the full roster we have here, but I'm pretty familiar with the Antietam casualties. It's one of our most requested research topics. A soldier named Thomas dying at Antietam would usually be noted." Emily's eyes, bright with professional curiosity, fixed on him. "Why do you ask? Is that your relative?" He forced a casual smile. No. My relative was David Miller, the medic. I was just curious about the details of the skirmish." Sometimes these personal accounts mention things the official records miss. He quickly steered the conversation away, asking about other diaries, other accounts of the battle, but his mind was racing. Young Thomas, a name that wasn't his, yet the description matched his own near-death experience perfectly. Someone had pronounced him dead, and then inexplicably, given him a different name in a private journal. And that name wasn't on the official casualty list either. It was as if someone had gone out of their way to ensure that the soldier who should have died that day, the one who was covered with a blanket and left for dead, simply vanished from all records. The implications were chilling. This wasn't just an accidental omission. This wasn't just a clerical error. This was a deliberate act of erasure. Someone knew. Someone had known then in 1862 that he shouldn't have died, or perhaps someone had made it so he didn't die. He felt a cold dread, deeper and more profound than any fear of death. It was the dread of discovery, of being watched, manipulated. For centuries he had believed his immortality was a curse, a random, cruel twist of fate. Now, for the first time, a new, far more terrifying possibility began to crystallize. What if it wasn't fate at all? What if it was designed? He thanked Emily, promising to return. As he left the quiet historical society, the scent of old paper no longer comforting, but menacing, a new layer of the mystery began to unfold. His search for truth had just unearthed something far more sinister than he could have ever imagined. He wasn't just trying to understand his own impossible existence. He was unearthing a secret that someone somewhere had gone to great lengths to bury, and that someone might still be watching. He felt a prickle on the back of his neck, a sensation he hadn't experienced since his earliest days of understanding his condition, the chilling suspicion that he was not alone in this world, and that his very existence was a carefully guarded secret. Not just his own, but theirs. The word theirs hung in the air, a silent, invisible weight settling over Michael's shoulders. It wasn't just a fleeting thought. It was a cold, hard certainty that had been lurking beneath the surface of his consciousness for decades, only now bursting forth with terrifying clarity. He wasn't a unique anomaly, a cosmic joke played on a single individual. He was one of them, and if there were others, then his solitary struggle, his desperate, lonely pursuit of oblivion, was part of a much larger, darker tapestry. The pieces began to click into place, a horrifying mosaic forming in his mind. The fleeting glances from strangers who held his gaze a beat too long, their eyes betraying an understanding that shouldn't exist. The hushed whispers he'd overheard in crowded places, snippets of conversations that, at the time, he dismissed as nonsensical, terms like the veil, the equilibrium, the keepers. He remembered the time years ago when he'd been struck by a speeding car, a collision that should have pulverized him. As he lay on the asphalt, perfectly intact, a man in a dark suit had emerged from the crowd, met his eyes with an unreadable expression, and then vanished before the sirens even started wailing. Michael had attributed it to shock, a hallucination. Now he knew better. He knew it was a cleanup, a cover-up, a silent affirmation of his impossible reality being meticulously maintained. Why the secret? Why the elaborate deception that allowed them to live among regular humans, their impossible existence hidden? And what was their purpose? Was it to protect humanity from them, or to protect them from humanity? The latter thought sent a chill down his spine. If the world knew of people who couldn't die, who defied the fundamental laws of nature, the consequences would be catastrophic. Fear, worship, scientific exploitation. Michael had imagined it all for himself. But for a group, that was an entirely different scale of threat, a societal earthquake that could shatter the foundations of human belief and order. The sensation of being watched, which had been a low hum of paranoia for months, now amplified into a piercing frequency. Every shadow seemed to deepen. Every mundane sound outside his apartment morphed into a potential signal. He found himself scanning faces in the grocery store, scrutinizing reflections in shop windows, convinced that they were everywhere, observing, guarding, ensuring the secret remained intact. He no longer saw the world as a place indifferent to his existence but as a stage, and he, a reluctant actor, with an unseen audience whose eyes never left him. He felt the weight of their collective gaze, a pressure that was both suffocating and strangely invigorating. His walks, once aimless journeys into the heart of potential accidents, became exercises in hyper-awareness. He started noticing patterns. The same silver sedan parked 3 blocks from his apartment building for 3 consecutive mornings, its windows tinted, its presence too consistent. The woman with the distinctive crimson scarf who appeared in his peripheral vision at the park, then again at the coffee shop, always just out of direct sight, always seemingly engrossed in something else, yet always there. He was a man who had spent decades trying to disappear, to cease to be. Now he was a man meticulously observing the world around him, searching for the very people who wanted him to remain unseen, untouched, and most importantly, silent. This new understanding, while terrifying, also introduced a perverse sliver of hope. If there were others, if there was an organization, then perhaps they held the key. The key to understanding his condition, the key to its origin, and most importantly, the key to its end. The thought was a dangerous seduction, a flickering candle in the eternal darkness of his life. He had always believed his immortality was a cosmic error, a glitch in the matrix of existence. Now it felt like a meticulously engineered design. And designs, no matter how intricate, could be unmade. He just needed to find the architect. His quest to die had transformed. It wasn't just about ending his personal torment anymore. It was about unraveling a profound mystery, a secret woven into the very fabric of society. He no longer sought accidental death. He sought information. He needed to find them, not to join them, not to understand their purpose, but to force their hand, to compel them to reveal the truth, and to, finally, grant him the release he craved. He would use their secret against them, leverage their fear of exposure to achieve his ultimate goal. He started small, cautiously. He dusted off an old, rarely used laptop, ensuring it was clean of any personal data. He used a VPN, a burner email, and an anonymous browser. His initial searches were vague, almost innocent: anomalous longevity, undetectable survival, hidden societies. The internet, a vast ocean of information and misinformation, yielded little of substance. Conspiracy theories, fringe science, ancient myths, nothing concrete, nothing that felt like the truth he now knew existed. They were good, very, very good at keeping their secret. The digital footprint was clean, scrubbed of any real evidence. He realized he was looking for the wrong things. They wouldn't leave breadcrumbs for the general public. They would use code, a symbol, a specific phrase. He cast his mind back to the whispers he'd overheard: the veil, the equilibrium, the keepers. He tried these terms, individually and in combination, with different search modifiers. Still nothing. It was like searching for a ghost in a library full of shadows, without knowing the name of the ghost or the specific book it haunted. The more he searched, the more impenetrable the wall of silence seemed. He thought about the places he had been, the people he had encountered, especially during his more desperate attempts at self-destruction. The underground clinic in Mexico City, where a doctor had promised a final solution, but had only left him with a deeper scar and a hefty bill. The remote monastery in Nepal, where monks had spoken of reincarnation and the cycle of suffering, but had no answer for a man who couldn't complete the cycle. Could any of these have been subtle probes, ways for them to monitor or even guide him away from true understanding? Each failure, each dead end, now seemed less like bad luck and more like a carefully orchestrated redirection. Then, a name surfaced from the murky depths of his memory: Dr. Eleanor Vance, a brilliant, eccentric geneticist he'd consulted nearly 50 years ago, early in his journey, when he still clung to the hope of a scientific explanation or a cure. She had been fascinated by his case, bordering on obsession. He remembered her office, cluttered with books and strange specimens, and her intense, almost feverish eyes as she'd examined him. She'd performed countless tests, taken endless samples, always with an air of profound curiosity, a relentless pursuit of knowledge. He recalled her final words to him, delivered with a strange mix of awe and fear. "Michael, what you are, it defies everything we know. It's not an illness. It's an impossibility, and some impossibilities are best left undisturbed." He dismissed her warning then, seeing it as scientific surrender, a frustrated admission of defeat. Now it sounded like a veiled threat, a professional warning from someone who perhaps knew more than she let on, someone who had been gently, or perhaps not so gently, steered away from a dangerous path. Eleanor Vance. She would be old now if she was even still alive. But she was the only person who had come close to understanding, or at least acknowledging, the true nature of his condition. She was the only one who seemed to hint at a larger context, a secret world beyond his lonely suffering. Could she have been one of them? or perhaps more likely an unwitting pawn, a brilliant mind who stumbled too close to the truth and was subtly redirected or silenced. She was his first concrete lead, a name, a historical anchor in the sea of his impossible life, a thread he could finally pull. He began to search for Dr. Eleanor Vance. University archives, medical journals, obituaries. He found a few academic papers from the 70s and 80s, brilliant but unremarkable in the context of his current search. Then, buried deep within a digital archive of a forgotten local newspaper, a small, almost hidden article from 20 years ago. It mentioned her retirement from research, citing health reasons, and a brief note about her moving to a secluded property in rural Vermont. The details were sparse, almost deliberately so. Too sparse for a woman of her academic stature. It felt like a deliberate attempt to make her disappear, to fade into obscurity. This wasn't just about being watched anymore. This was about them knowing he was looking. He was no longer a restless spirit seeking peace, but a hunter, albeit a desperate one, stalking an elusive prey. And he knew with a certainty that made his blood run cold, that if he was looking for them, they were now looking back with an entirely different kind of intensity. The game had changed, and for the first time in centuries, Michael felt a tremor of something other than despair. A primal, terrifying thrill. The thrill of the chase, even if he was both the hunter and the hunted. Upon making his own desperate moves on a board, he was only just beginning to comprehend. He was no longer just seeking death, he was seeking revelation. And he understood with a clarity that stung, that this quest for truth might be far more dangerous than any attempt he had made to end his own life. Because if they wanted their secret kept, and he was threatening to expose it, then his inability to die might not be a curse at all, but a terrible, prolonged vulnerability. He was indestructible, yes, but he could be imprisoned. He could be tortured. He could be made to wish for death in ways he hadn't yet imagined, ways that would make his previous centuries of suffering feel like a pleasant dream. And the thought of an eternity of that was the most terrifying prospect of all. The thought of an eternity of that was the most terrifying prospect of all. His centuries of existence had been a relentless, lonely quest for an end. He'd courted death in every conceivable form, from the quiet dignity of a poisoned chalice in ancient Rome to the spectacular, fiery embrace of a collapsing skyscraper in modern New York. He'd walked into battlefields, stood before firing squads, plunged into the deepest oceans, and even dared to challenge the most ruthless warlords, all in the desperate hope that this time, the universe would finally relent and grant him oblivion. But it never did. Each time he returned whole and unbroken, to the crushing weight of another sunrise. Yet, in all those millennia, through all the pain and the boredom, through the countless identities shed like old skin, one fear had never gnawed at him with such icy certainty: the fear of being kept, of being a specimen, a curiosity, a living testament to an aberration that powerful unseen forces would wish to study, exploit, or worst of all, punish. His immortality, once a personal curse, now threatened to become a public spectacle, and that was a fate far more grotesque than the simple continuation of life. He'd always known, in the back of his mind, that his anomaly couldn't go entirely unnoticed. There were too many near misses, too many times he'd walked away from catastrophes that should have claimed him, too many instances where he'd outlived entire generations, only to reappear subtly altered in a new city, a new country. He'd been meticulous, or so he thought. He'd changed his appearance, his accent, his profession, his entire persona every few decades. He'd erased his digital footprint long before the concept even existed, learning to live off the grid with an expertise born of necessity. But even the most careful ghost leaves faint echoes. The first true tremor of dread had come almost a century ago, in the aftermath of a particularly daring attempt to end it all. He'd engineered a complex industrial accident, a deliberate collapse that would bury him under tons of steel and concrete. He'd calculated every variable, ensuring no survivors, no witnesses. But when he'd finally clawed his way out of the rubble, regenerating bone and flesh that had been pulverized beyond recognition, he'd seen them. Not directly, not overtly. They weren't men in black suits with flashing badges. They were subtler, more insidious. A lone, nondescript sedan parked a block away, its occupants seemingly oblivious, yet their posture, their stillness, spoke of a vigilance that chilled him to the core. A glint of a lens from a darkened window in a building that should have been evacuated. A fleeting shadow in an alley that vanished too quickly. He dismissed it then, attributing it to the chaos, the aftermath of a major disaster. But the memory had lingered, a persistent itch under his skin. Over the decades, those fleeting glimpses became a pattern. A peculiar symbol carved into an old stone wall near where he'd once recuperated from a particularly nasty fall from a cliff. The same symbol, subtly integrated into the architecture of a seemingly unrelated building in another country, decades later. The same type of specialized, almost invisible surveillance equipment, disguised as mundane street furniture, appearing in cities he frequented. He started to recognize the feel of being watched, a subtle shift in the ambient energy, a heightened awareness that had nothing to do with human intuition and everything to do with the instinct of a creature that had been hunted for far too long. He'd called them, in his silent thoughts, the Keepers. Not a government, not a corporation, but something older, deeper, more clandestine. An organization dedicated to observing, containing, perhaps even controlling the anomalies of the world. And he, the man who couldn't die, was perhaps their most prized or most feared anomaly. His recent desperation, his increasingly bold attempts at suicide, had brought him closer to their attention than ever before. He'd grown careless, weary of the careful masquerade. He'd wanted to be found by death, not by them, but his longing for an end had inadvertently led him to the precipice of a fate far worse. Just last month he'd felt the net tighten. He'd been living quietly in a small town in rural Montana, posing as a reclusive novelist, enjoying the anonymity the vast wilderness afforded. He'd planned to walk into a blizzard, to simply let the unforgiving cold claim him, hoping that the sheer thermodynamic impossibility of his regeneration in such conditions might finally break the cycle. But as he'd packed his meager supplies, a sudden inexplicable power outage had plunged the entire valley into darkness. It was an unusual occurrence, given the town's robust grid. And then the faint, almost imperceptible hum of a drone, higher than any commercial model, had passed directly over his cabin. He knew. He could feel its gaze, not just a camera, but something more, something that could detect the unique energy signature of his regenerating cells. He'd abandoned everything. Left the cabin, the carefully constructed identity, the half-finished manuscript, and disappeared into the night, moving with a speed and stealth that belied his apparent age. He'd spent the last few weeks as a ghost, sleeping in abandoned buildings, traveling only by night, constantly changing direction, like a hunted animal. His journey eventually led him to a small, unassuming public library in a mid-sized city in Ohio. He wasn't looking for anything specific, just a place to blend in, to feel the quiet hum of ordinary human life around him, a temporary balm for his frayed nerves. He sat at a dusty table in the local history section, pretending to read an old almanac, his senses acutely aware of every rustle, every whisper. That's when he saw her. Emily. She was young, perhaps in her late 20s, with bright, inquisitive eyes framed by a shock of auburn hair that kept falling into her face. She wore glasses perched on her nose and a focused frown as she meticulously sifted through stacks of brittle, yellowed newspaper clippings. She looked like a graduate student, or perhaps a local history enthusiast. She was entirely unremarkable, yet something about her drew his attention. Her energy was restless, intense, like a small contained storm. He watched her for a while, observing her methodical approach. She wasn't just browsing. She was searching for something specific. Her fingers moved with practiced ease through the delicate paper, occasionally pausing to snap a quick photo with her phone. He could hear the faint click of the camera, a minor disruption in the library's hushed atmosphere. After an hour or so, she sighed, a frustrated puff of air, and pushed her glasses up her nose. She stood, stretching her back with a soft groan, and then turned to reshelve a particularly thick volume of local obituaries from the early 1900s. As she did, she mumbled to herself, loud enough for him to catch a few words across the quiet room. "It's just too many coincidences," she whispered, shaking her head. "The disappearances, the unexplained fires, the people who just vanished without a trace. Always around the same specific dates, always centered on these obscure, forgotten societal clubs. The Order of the Crimson Quill, the Silent Watchers of the Ohio. It's all so vague, so deliberately obfuscated." She ran a hand through her hair, clearly exasperated. "And then there's that symbol. Always that damn symbol." His blood ran cold. The almanac slipped from his fingers, hitting the table with a soft thud that resonated like a gunshot in the silent library. Emily's head snapped up, her eyes locking with his for a brief, startled moment. He quickly averted his gaze, pretending to be absorbed in retrieving the fallen book, his heart hammering against his ribs. It was the symbol, the very same peculiar, almost invisible symbol he'd seen carved into walls, integrated into architecture, and subtly present in the surveillance equipment of the keepers. He knew it intimately, a stylized interlocking pair of serpents, forming an impossible knot, with a single unblinking eye at its center. He'd always assumed it was their secret mark, their sigil of authority. And now this young woman, this completely ordinary Emily, was piecing together fragments of history that hinted at their existence, their long reach, their methodical cleansing of anomalies. She was digging into the very shadows he'd spent centuries trying to avoid. He risked another glance at her. She was looking at him again, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes, probably wondering about his sudden clumsiness. He quickly looked away, forcing himself to breathe slowly, evenly. She couldn't know. She couldn't possibly connect him to any of this. He was just another face in the library, but a terrifying realization dawned on him. His fear of being found by the keepers had become so consuming that he hadn't considered the possibility of others stumbling upon their secrets. Emily, in her innocent pursuit of forgotten history, was treading on ground far more dangerous than she could ever comprehend. She was unknowingly walking into the path of an organization that systematically erased anything that threatened their secrecy, any loose end, any inconvenient truth. He had spent centuries trying to die, trying to vanish from existence. Now he found himself in a new horrifying predicament. Not only was he being hunted by an organization that wanted to keep him alive for unimaginably cruel purposes, but an innocent young woman, through no fault of her own, was about to become collateral damage in his ongoing, unwilling existence. And for the first time in a very long time, his focus shifted from his own endless suffering to a different kind of burden, the potential consequence of his curse on someone else. What was he supposed to do? Let her continue, knowing the danger she was in? Or expose himself, draw more attention, and potentially lead the keepers directly to her? The weight of his immortality had just become heavier than he ever thought possible. He couldn't. The thought was a searing brand on his ancient soul. He couldn't let Emily walk into that abyss. His own endless suffering was one thing, a burden he'd long since accepted, but to stand by as an innocent life, a life dedicated to justice, was snuffed out by the very machinations that enslaved him. No, he wouldn't. The decision, once agonizing, now felt like a cold, hard stone settling in his chest. He had to act. He would act. But how? How did a ghost of centuries past, a man who couldn't die, intervene in a modern serial killer investigation without revealing the impossible truth of his existence? Without drawing the very predators he sought to avoid directly to Emily's doorstep? It was a delicate dance, a tightrope walk over an inferno. He spent the next few days in a heightened state of awareness, a vigilance he hadn't fully embraced in decades. He became a shadow, a whisper in the urban jungle of the city. He watched Emily. He observed her movements, her routines, the quiet determination etched on her face as she delved deeper into the darkness. He saw the late nights at the precinct, the hurried coffee runs, the way she ran a hand through her hair in frustration, a gesture so human, so vulnerable. He knew with a chilling certainty that she was getting too close. The keepers wouldn't tolerate loose ends. His mind, a vast library of forgotten lore and ancient secrets, began sifting through possibilities. The Ouroboros symbol. Emily had mentioned it. A serpent devouring its tail. A symbol of eternity, cycles, rebirth. But Michael knew its darker interpretations. Its use by cults and secret societies throughout history who sought to manipulate or even become eternal. He'd seen variations of it in Roman catacombs, on medieval alchemical texts, etched into the walls of forgotten temples in the East. Each variation, each subtle flourish, often held a specific, coded meaning. He remembered a particularly obscure text, an alchemical manuscript from the 14th century, penned by a reclusive group known as the Serpent's Embrace. They were proto-keepers in many ways, obsessed with the concept of deathlessness, not through physical immortality, but through a spiritual transcendence they believed could be achieved by consuming the essence of others. Their Ouroboros was unique. It contained an almost imperceptible fractal pattern within the scales of the serpent, a geometric intricacy that would be dismissed as artistic embellishment by most, but to Michael, represented a hidden language, a signature. Could this be it? Could the keepers, in their modern incarnation, be using this ancient, forgotten signature? If so, it was a lead Emily would never find on her own, a needle in a haystack of historical esoterica. It was a risk, but it was a risk he had to take. His target was the evidence locker, specifically the photographs and forensic reports from the crime scenes. Getting in would be difficult, but not impossible for someone who didn't need to worry about tripwires or security cameras. He was a master of observation, of patience, of blending into the background until he was effectively invisible. He had centuries of practice navigating secure spaces, from royal treasuries to sealed crypts. Modern technology, while sophisticated, still relied on human oversight, on the assumption of human limitations. Limitations Michael simply didn't possess. He chose a night when the precinct was particularly quiet, save for the rhythmic hum of fluorescent lights and the distant chatter of a late-shift dispatcher. Moving like a wraith, he bypassed the security systems with an almost casual expertise, his movements fluid, silent, honed by countless lifetimes of self-preservation. Inside the evidence locker, the air was cold, sterile, heavy with the ghosts of past crimes. He found the evidence bags containing the Ouroboros symbols, detailed photographs, sketches, even a few physical remnants from the scenes. His eyes, accustomed to discerning the minutest details in fading frescoes and ancient parchments, scanned the images. And there it was, on the third victim's symbol, etched onto a small, preserved piece of bark found near the body, the fractal pattern. Tiny, almost invisible to the naked eye. A series of repeating, self-similar triangles within the serpent's scales. It was the exact signature from the serpent's embrace. A cold dread washed over him, not of fear for himself, but for what this confirmed. The keepers weren't just hunting him. They were enacting a ritual, a continuation of a centuries-old quest for power and control over life and death. The victims weren't random. They weren't just targets of opportunity. The fractal pattern, combined with the Ouroboros, suggested a deeper, more sinister purpose. He remembered the serpent's embrace, believed in a concept they called the consummation of cycles, the idea that by ending certain lineages, or by disrupting specific patterns of existence, they could accelerate their own path to transcendent immortality. He quickly cross-referenced the victims in his mind: a young artist, a philosophy professor, a community activist. On the surface, no obvious connection. But if the keepers were targeting specific lineages or patterns, what was the common thread? He accessed the victims' personal files, their family histories, their genetic markers if available. He wasn't looking for obvious links, but for the subtle, almost invisible threads that only someone with his vast historical knowledge could possibly identify. And then it clicked. Not a direct lineage, but a shared, incredibly rare genetic anomaly. A specific allele, almost dormant in most of humanity, but slightly more pronounced in these individuals. An allele that centuries ago was associated with a small, isolated community known for their profound spiritual insights and ironically, their belief in a natural cyclical form of rebirth. A community that had been systematically wiped out by an early iteration of the Keepers, who saw their natural spirituality as a threat to their manufactured immortality. The victims were not just random people. They were descendants, however distant, of that very community. The Keepers were finishing a job, eliminating the last vestiges of a genetic line they perceived as an antithesis to their own manufactured existence. They were consuming the cycle of this specific lineage, believing it would somehow strengthen their own quest for absolute dominion over life and death. Michael felt a surge of cold fury. He had thought the Keepers' methods had evolved, become more sophisticated, less rooted in such barbaric ritualistic practices. But here it was, a brutal echo from the past playing out in the modern world. He couldn't just drop a note saying, "Hey, these people are descendants of an ancient spiritual community with a rare genetic marker, targeted by an immortal secret society." Emily would think he was insane. He needed to provide a tangible, actionable lead, something that would resonate with her investigative mind, something that would lead her down the right path without exposing the impossible truth. He returned to his makeshift sanctuary, his mind racing. He needed to get the information about the serpent's embrace and the fractal pattern to Emily. An anonymous email, perhaps? Too easily dismissed. A phone call? Untraceable, but again easily written off as a crank. He remembered Emily's frustration with the lack of progress. What if he could subtly guide her to the source of the information? Not the information itself, but a hint to where she could find it. He decided on a more elaborate yet safer approach. He would create a breadcrumb trail. He would leave an anonymous package for Emily, containing a single cryptic item, a reproduction of a page from the Serpent's Embrace, specifically the page depicting the unique Ouroboros with the fractal pattern. He would include no text, no explanation, just the image. He knew Emily. She was a detective with an insatiable curiosity and a keen eye for detail. When faced with an unexplained anomaly, she wouldn't dismiss it. She would dig. She would research the image, the style, the historical period. And eventually, if he was right, she would stumble upon the obscure text, the Serpent's Embrace, and its forgotten lore. The challenge was delivering it without leaving a trace. He couldn't just mail it. He had to place it directly where she would find it, in a way that seemed almost accidental. Her desk at the precinct? Too risky. Her home? Even riskier, an invasion of privacy. He thought about her routine. Her coffee shop. Every morning, the same place, the same table, the same order. He could leave it there, tucked into a discarded newspaper, or perhaps taped discreetly under the table where she always sat. It was a long shot, but it was his best shot. The next morning before dawn, he prepared the package. A high-quality print of the Ouroboros page, carefully aged to look like an old document, but clearly a reproduction. He placed it inside a nondescript envelope. He would be there, waiting, watching, a silent guardian in the shadows. As the sun began to paint the sky with streaks of orange and purple, Michael positioned himself across the street from Emily's usual coffee spot. He saw her arrive, her shoulders hunched slightly against the morning chill, her face still carrying the weight of the investigation. She ordered her usual, then headed to her customary table by the window. Michael moved. With practiced ease, he slipped into the coffee shop, a ghost among the early morning commuters. He walked past her table, deftly sliding the envelope under the edge of the tabletop, securing it with a small, almost invisible piece of tape. He continued out, blending back into the stream of pedestrians, his heart a strange mixture of apprehension and grim satisfaction. He watched from a distance as Emily settled in, took a sip of her coffee and pulled out her notebook. Her eyes scanned the table, perhaps looking for something, or just idly observing. Then her hand brushed against the envelope. She frowned, her brow furrowing in confusion. She pulled it out, turning it over, her detective's instincts clearly activated. She opened it. Her eyes widened slightly as she saw the image. Michael could almost feel her mind begin to churn, connecting, analyzing. He knew she wouldn't dismiss it. He knew she would investigate. But as he watched her, a new unsettling thought pierced through his hard-won resolve. His intervention, no matter how subtle, was a ripple in the pond. And the keepers, he knew, were masters of sensing even the slightest disturbance. He had just gone from being an unseen observer to an active player. He had drawn a line in the sand, and in doing so, he had likely drawn their attention. Not just to Emily, but back to him, the man they had been hunting for centuries. A chill, colder than any winter wind, snaked down his spine. He had made his choice. Now he had to live with the consequences, or more accurately, continue to live through them, knowing that his desperate attempt to save one life might just expose them both to the relentless pursuit of those who sought to control death itself. The game had changed, and Michael, for the first time in a very long time, felt a flicker of something akin to fear. Not for his own existence, but for the fragile mortal woman who now held a piece of his secret in her hands. He couldn't remember the last time he truly feared anything. Centuries had eroded the very concept of personal danger. Pain was fleeting, injury a temporary inconvenience, and death was a myth for him. But this was different. This wasn't fear for his own unending existence, but a primal protective dread for Emily. Her mortality, once a distant abstract concept, now felt like a fragile glass shard pressed against his own ancient hardened skin. He had, in his vast, lonely stretch of life, seen empires rise and fall, witnessed countless lives blossom and wither, always from a safe, detached distance. Emily, however, had breached that distance. She had stumbled into the heart of his secret, and in doing so had painted a target on her own back. A target only visible to him, but terrifyingly real. His first instinct was to disappear again, to sever the connection, to let her go and hope the knowledge would fade into the realm of unbelievable nightmares. But the thought was a hollow echo of his past self. He couldn't. Not now. The ghost of a smile, the genuine curiosity in her eyes, The way she had looked at him, not with fear or awe, but with a quiet, persistent intrigue, it had anchored him in a way he hadn't realized was possible. His centuries of self-imposed isolation had taught him caution, but they hadn't prepared him for this strange, unsettling pull of human connection. So Michael began to watch her, not from the shadows of an alley, but through the sophisticated network of resources he had meticulously built over generations. He wanted to understand what her discovery meant to her, how she would wield such a dangerous truth. He observed her apartment, her work, her daily routines. He expected panic, or perhaps a reckless pursuit of the impossible. What he found instead was a quiet, almost meticulous intensity. Emily didn't run to the media. She didn't seek out fringe scientists or expose herself to ridicule. Instead, she retreated into her own world of research. Her apartment, once a neat, minimalist space, began to transform. Books on obscure biological anomalies, ancient texts on alchemy, forgotten medical journals, they piled up on every surface. Her laptop glowed late into the night, displaying complex molecular structures, historical timelines, and cryptic symbols. She was dissecting the impossible, not with a madman's zeal, but with a scholar's precision. Michael found himself strangely fascinated. Her mind, sharp and disciplined, was approaching his condition not as a miracle or a curse, but as a scientific problem to be solved. She wasn't seeking immortality for herself. She was seeking answers. And in her methodical pursuit, Michael saw a reflection of his own forgotten past, a time when he too sought understanding before the endlessness had dulled his curiosity into despair. But as he watched Emily, another, more unsettling pattern began to emerge. Faint at first, almost imperceptible, a black sedan parked a little too long down the street from her apartment, a flickering shadow on her office building's surveillance footage, too quick, too fluid to be normal, a sudden inexplicable dip in her digital security, quickly patched, but leaving a faint trace. It was like a ripple in still water, spreading from a stone he hadn't seen dropped. Someone else was watching. Someone else was interested. The thought sent a shiver down his spine that had nothing to do with cold. His existence had been a tightly guarded secret for so long, protected by his own careful movements and the sheer improbability of his story. Now Emily, in her innocent pursuit of truth, had drawn attention. Or perhaps the attention had always been there, merely dormant, waiting for a signal flare. Michael had encountered others like him, or at least those who claimed to be like him, in the distant past. Charlatans, madmen, cult leaders who twisted his unique affliction into a divine blessing or a demonic curse. He had always dismissed them, knowing they were fabrications, desperate attempts to grasp at something beyond human comprehension. But what if one of them, somewhere, had been telling a sliver of truth? What if his condition wasn't entirely unique, merely incredibly rare? He began to cross-reference Emily's research with his own vast, ancient archives. He looked for patterns, for connections, for any historical whispers of others who had defied death. He delved into forgotten legends, obscure scientific treatises, coded chronicles of secret societies. And slowly, agonizingly, a faint, terrifying echo began to emerge from the dust of centuries. Not of other immortals, not exactly, but of those who sought them, those who preyed on them, those who, throughout history, had pursued the very essence of endless life, not to understand it, but to control it. These weren't just curious academics. These were individuals, or perhaps organizations, whose names were synonymous with power and shadow. They operated outside the conventional world, manipulating events, pushing boundaries of science and ethics, all in pursuit of what they called the eternal spark. He had dismissed them as mere conspiracy theories, the fevered dreams of the paranoid, but now, seeing the subtle signs around Emily, Michael felt a cold dread settle in his bones. He knew he couldn't let Emily face this alone. His fear for her had become a potent catalyst, shattering his apathy. He needed to re-engage, but carefully. He couldn't reveal the full extent of his past, not yet. He had to guide her, protect her, and perhaps, through her fresh perspective, finally find the answer he had sought for so long. One evening, as Emily was leaving her office, lost in thought, a sudden sharp crack echoed from an alleyway beside her. A heavy planter, dislodged from a window ledge above, plummeted towards her. Michael, who had been observing from a discreet distance, moved without thinking. In a blur, he was there, pushing her roughly out of the way, the ceramic shattering just inches from where her head had been moments before. Michael! Emily gasped, scrambling back, her eyes wide with shock. What was that? He stood over the broken pottery, his heart, which rarely beat with such intensity, hammering in his chest. Just a close call, Emily, he said, forcing a calm he didn't feel. You need to be more careful. She looked at the shattered pieces, then at him, a flicker of suspicion mingling with gratitude. It just fell, she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. From a third-story window? He met her gaze, his own eyes conveying a silent warning. Sometimes the world is a dangerous place, Emily, especially when you start asking dangerous questions. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. She knew he knew. He knew she knew he knew. The pretense was gone. You've been watching me, haven't you? She said, her voice barely a whisper. He didn't deny it. I had to. You're dabbling in things far beyond your understanding. My understanding? She retorted, a flash of indignation in her eyes. I'm trying to understand you, Michael. What you are. How it's possible. And I think I'm getting close. She gestured vaguely towards her office building. I found something. Something in the historical records that connects to your story. An old legend dismissed as folklore, but with precise details that echo what I saw in your cells. Michael felt a surge of adrenaline, a mixture of hope and renewed dread. What did you find? A cult, she said, her voice dropping as if sharing a forbidden secret. Not just any cult. An ancient order, existing for millennia, known only as the Chronos Keepers. They believed in a singular individual, a firstborn who held the key to unlocking true immortality. They weren't just studying longevity. They were obsessed with a specific genetic anomaly, a cellular regeneration that defied natural law. They chronicled this firstborn through hidden symbols, coded texts, and a network of clandestine agents across different eras. The descriptions, they match you, Michael, down to the smallest details. Michael's mind reeled. The Chronos Keepers. He had heard whispers of them in his early centuries, dismissed them as another fleeting human obsession with the divine. But Emily's description, the level of detail, it was unsettling. He had always assumed his condition was a singular, random anomaly. The idea of an entire organization dedicated to tracking such an individual, and for millennia, was a terrifying thought. And if they knew about a firstborn, did that imply others? Or did it imply something far more sinister? That he was the target of a hunt that had spanned civilizations? And the planter, Michael? Emily pressed, her eyes fixed on his. Was that just a coincidence? Or was it them? He looked at the shattered ceramic, then back at her. The question hung heavy in the air, a silent acknowledgement of the new, terrifying reality. He had spent centuries trying to die, convinced his endless life was a solitary curse. Now it seemed he was not only not alone, but he was a prize, hunted by shadows that had watched him from the dawn of time. And Emily, the fragile mortal woman who had dared to peer into his secret, was now inextricably caught in the crosshairs. The game wasn't just changed. It had become a deadly, multi-layered trap, and they were both caught within its intricate, ancient wires. He knew with chilling certainty that his greatest challenge wasn't finding death, but keeping Emily alive long enough to help him face the ancient hunters who had now emerged from the shadows. The realization hit Michael like a physical blow, colder than any winter night. He wasn't just a man cursed with unending life. He was now a pawn, a prize in a game he hadn't known existed. Emily, his only confidant, his only link to a semblance of humanity, was caught in the crossfire. His greatest wish, death, seemed further away than ever, replaced by an urgent, primal need to protect her. They were still in the crumbling library, the scent of dust and ancient paper heavy in the air. The whispers had stopped, but the oppressive silence that followed felt infinitely more menacing. Michael pulled Emily close, his eyes scanning the shadowed corners, his ears straining for any sound. He knew instinctively that the hunters weren't just a threat. They were an organization, a network, and they wouldn't just send one person. "We need to move now," he murmured, his voice a low rumble against her hair. "They know we're here. They know about me." Emily, though shaken, nodded, her jaw set with a courage Michael found both admirable and terrifying. She had seen too much, learned too much to be easily intimidated. "But who are they, Michael? What do they want?" "I don't know, but I have a feeling it's not a friendly visit," he replied, already pulling her towards a side exit he'd noticed earlier. a rusted fire escape leading down to a forgotten alleyway. He moved with a speed and stealth born of centuries of avoiding unwanted attention, a skill honed by countless escapes from curious scientists, vengeful lovers, and accidental encounters with those who saw him as an anomaly. As they descended the creaking metal stairs, a sudden blinding light flashed from a window above, followed by a sharp crack that echoed through the alley. A bullet whizzed past Michael's head, embedding itself in the brick wall just inches from Emily. Not a warning shot. They were trying to incapacitate, to capture, or perhaps even worse, to study. Michael shielded Emily, pushing her ahead, his body a living barricade. Another shot, and this time he felt the impact, a blunt force against his shoulder. He stumbled but didn't fall. The bullet, of course, hadn't penetrated deeply, but the sheer force of it was enough to momentarily stun him. He could feel the bruise forming, the skin already beginning to knit itself back together. It was a strange, perverse comfort, knowing he could take the hit, but the thought of Emily being struck filled him with a cold dread. They reached the ground, scrambling over discarded crates and overflowing dumpsters. The alley opened onto a bustling street, a chaotic symphony of car horns, distant sirens, and the chatter of evening commuters. It was both a blessing and a curse. Anonymity in the crowd, but also 1,000 potential eyes. 1,000 places for a hunter to hide. "We need to disappear," Michael said, his voice urgent. "Anywhere but here. Do you have a safe place?" "An old apartment, a friend's couch." Emily shook her head, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "After what happened with Dr. Thorne, I've been nomadic. I don't have a fixed address, not anymore. And my phone, they could track it." She pulled out her smartphone, its screen still displaying the cryptic symbols they had found. "I think the only thing connecting us to them is this. Or maybe it's you." Michael felt a surge of frustration. His own existence was the beacon, the signal. For centuries he had lived in the shadows, moving from city to city, identity to identity, always careful to leave no trace. But now it seemed his past had finally caught up. Or perhaps it had been waiting all along, patient and unseen, until he unwittingly stumbled upon the ancient truth. "Then we go off the grid," Michael decided, his mind already racing, sifting through centuries of accumulated knowledge. Cash, burner phones, no digital footprint. We need to find out who these people are, and why they're interested in me before they get too close. They spent the next few hours in a frantic blur, moving through the city like ghosts. First, to a forgotten antique shop Michael knew, where he exchanged a small, ancient coin for a hefty sum of untraceable cash. Then, to a nondescript electronics store for burner phones, paid for in cash, of course. Emily, surprisingly adept, deleted her social media accounts, wiped her laptop, and even disconnected her bank accounts from any online access. She was a quick study, adapting to the clandestine world Michael had inhabited for so long. Their destination was an old, forgotten safe house Michael maintained in an unassuming part of Queens. It was a small, dusty apartment above a perpetually closed storefront, accessible only through a hidden entrance in the back alley. He had used it in the 1970s, then again in the 90s, always changing the locks and adding new layers of obscurity. It was the only place he felt even a semblance of security. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the smell of forgotten lives. Michael pulled down ancient blackout blinds, ensuring no light could escape. Emily sank onto a worn couch, her face pale but resolute. "Okay, we're safe for now. What's the plan?" Michael paced the small living room, his mind a whirlwind of fragmented memories and new, terrifying possibilities. The symbols, the manuscript, it's all connected. These hunters aren't just random thugs. They're organized. They have resources. And they know things about me that I don't even know myself. He remembered the feeling of the bullet striking him, the dull ache that quickly faded. He had faced countless injuries, recovered from countless diseases, but no one had ever come after him with such calculated precision, with such an air of ancient authority. The manuscript mentioned an order of the unseen, Emily recalled, her fingers tracing the air as if trying to grasp the elusive words. Guardians of the balance, watchers of the eternal. Sounded like a myth, a legend. But what if it's real? What if they are the order? If they are, then what balance are they guarding? Michael mused, staring out at the darkened window. The city lights a distant blur. And what does my existence have to do with it? Am I an imbalance? A threat? A chilling thought struck him. one that had been lurking at the edge of his consciousness since he'd first seen the ancient text. What if? What if they don't want to kill me? What if they want to control me? Or worse, what if they want to understand how I can't die, to replicate it? The idea of being a living experiment, a specimen for an ancient shadowy organization, was far more terrifying than any death he could imagine. Emily shivered. That's a horrifying thought. But it makes sense. If they're guardians of the eternal, maybe they see your immortality as a key to something far greater, or a dangerous anomaly they need to contain. They certainly seem to be containing me back in that library, Michael muttered, rubbing his shoulder where the bullet had struck. The bruise was already fading, the skin smooth and unblemished. But they were too quick. How did they know we were there? How did they find us so fast? Emily looked at her burner phone, then at Michael's. We turned off our old phones, but what if they have another way? A tracker? Or what if they've been watching you for a very long time? The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken dread. Michael had always assumed his anonymity was his greatest shield. But if these hunters had been observing him for centuries, patiently waiting for him to expose his unique condition, then his entire life had been a carefully orchestrated illusion. He walked over to a dusty bookshelf, pulling out an old leather-bound journal. It was one of many he kept, filled with coded observations, forgotten languages, and historical snippets he'd picked up over the ages. He rarely looked at them, but now, he felt an urgent need to re-examine everything. The manuscript didn't just appear out of nowhere, Emily, Michael said, flipping through the brittle pages of his journal. It was hidden, guarded. And the symbols? They were a key, a map of sorts. Someone wanted me to find it. Someone wanted me to unlock this truth. Who? Emily asked, leaning forward, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and intellectual curiosity. That's the ultimate question, isn't it? Michael replied, his gaze distant, lost in the labyrinth of time. Was it a benevolent hand, guiding me towards understanding? Or a trap, set by these ancient hunters, knowing I would eventually seek answers to my curse? He suddenly stopped at a particular entry in his journal, a faded sketch of a symbol he'd seen once centuries ago, in a forgotten temple in the Himalayas. It was remarkably similar to one of the cryptic marks they had found in the manuscript, a stylized eye within a coiled serpent. He had dismissed it then as a mere local deity, an artistic flourish. Now he saw it with new terrifying clarity. It was a mark, a signature. This symbol, he murmured, pointing to the drawing. I saw it once long ago. It's an ancient sign of an order that supposedly guarded forbidden knowledge. They were said to be the keepers of secrets that could unravel the fabric of reality itself. Emily peered over his shoulder. The Order of the Unseen, she whispered, the words taking on a new ominous weight. They're not just a legend, Michael. They're real. And they've been watching you, waiting for you to find their path. But why? Why now? Michael closed the journal, the realization settling deep in his bones. He hadn't stumbled upon a secret. He had been led to it. Every step, every discovery, every encounter had been orchestrated. The manuscript, the whispers, the very unraveling of his past. It was all part of a grander design. And now the true architects of that design, the ancient hunters, had finally revealed themselves. He was not just a man who couldn't die. He was a piece in an ancient cosmic puzzle, and the game had just begun. His desperate wish for death was no longer a personal quest, but a dangerous, high-stakes gamble for freedom and survival, not just for himself, but for Emily, who had now become inextricably linked to his unending curse. The organization's shadow fell over them with an almost physical weight. Emily, pale but determined, clutched Michael's hand, her gaze locked on his. The world, which had once felt like an endless prison for Michael, was now a battlefield, and the stakes were higher than anything he could have imagined. His own life, or lack thereof, had always been a personal burden, but Emily's life, her very future, now hung in the balance. Thorne didn't waste time. A burner phone, left anonymously on their doorstep, buzzed a mere hour after their harrowing escape. The message was succinct, chilling. Michael, you have 24 hours to present yourself at the coordinates provided. Failure to comply will result in the immediate and irreversible suffering of Miss Emily Hayes. We are watching. Do not test our resolve. A set of encrypted coordinates followed. Michael crushed the phone in his hand, the plastic splintering, but the message was etched in his mind. Surrendering meant an eternity of being a lab rat, a specimen, a living ghost in a cage. But refusing meant condemning Emily. He looked at her, saw the fear in her eyes, but also a flicker of defiance. "No," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "You can't go. That's what they want. They want to break you, use you. We fight this. Together." Her resolve, unexpected and fierce, ignited a spark in Michael. For so long, he had yearned for an end, but now the thought of Emily facing this alone, or suffering because of him, was a far more potent agony than any he had ever endured. He had to protect her. He had to find a way out. "Together," he echoed, the word feeling alien yet powerfully right on his tongue. Their first move was to vanish. They abandoned the safe house, knowing it was compromised. They moved through the city like phantoms, changing clothes, using cash, avoiding cameras. But the feeling of being watched was relentless. A black sedan seemed to linger a little too long at a corner. A figure in a dark coat appeared and disappeared in a crowd. It was a psychological warfare, designed to erode their sanity before the real battle even began. Michael surprisingly found a new kind of clarity. His body might be indestructible, but his mind, scarred by centuries of despair, was now sharpened by a desperate purpose. He began to observe, to anticipate. He noticed the subtle tells, the almost imperceptible patterns of surveillance. He used his unique condition not as a curse but as a tool. He could take risks no one else could. He could walk into dangerous situations, knowing he would emerge, albeit perhaps in pieces. Emily, for her part, was a revelation. She might not have Michael's invulnerability, but her mind was a formidable weapon. She was a natural with technology, quickly setting up secure communication lines, scrubbing their digital footprints, and creating diversions. She was the strategist, the analyst, poring over the vague clues Thorne had left, trying to decode the organization's true nature. "They're not just a Black Ops group," Emily murmured one night, huddled over a laptop in a seedy motel room, the screen casting an eerie glow on her face. "Their resources are too vast, their reach too wide. This isn't about a government agency. This is something bigger. Something almost corporate, but with military precision." She had managed to trace some of Thorne's digital breadcrumbs back to a series of shell corporations, all linked to a pharmaceutical giant called Ethelred Biosolutions. The name, Old English for Noble Counsel, was a chilling irony. Ethelred Biosolutions specialized in advanced genetic research, longevity treatments, and regenerative medicine. "They don't want to kill you, Michael," Emily explained, her voice hushed. "They want to understand you. They want to replicate you. Imagine the power, the profit of a world where death is optional, where aging is a choice. You are the ultimate prize." The realization hit Michael with the force of a physical blow. They weren't just trying to imprison him. They were trying to dissect the very essence of his curse, to weaponize it. His immortality, once a personal hell, was now a potential global catastrophe if it fell into the wrong hands. The weight of this new responsibility was crushing. He wasn't just fighting for himself and Emily now. He was fighting to keep a terrifying power from being unleashed upon the world. Emily's research led them to a former employee of Ethelred Biosolutions, a Dr. Silas Croft, who had been abruptly terminated years ago under mysterious circumstances. Croft had published a few obscure papers hinting at the ethical dangers of unchecked genetic manipulation before disappearing from the academic scene. He was, Emily speculated, a whistleblower before the term became widely understood, silenced by the very organization they were now battling. "He might know something," Emily said, her finger hovering over Croft's last known address, a remote cabin in the Appalachian foothills. "He might have information, a weakness, anything that could help us." It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was their only lead. The coordinates Thorne had given Michael were for a facility deep within a sprawling Ethelred Biosolutions complex in rural Ohio. They had 24 hours ticking away like a doomsday clock. They couldn't go there. Not yet. They needed leverage. The drive to the Appalachian foothills was fraught with tension. Michael, behind the wheel of a stolen, nondescript sedan, felt every shadow, every distant headlight, as a potential threat. Emily, beside him, was constantly scanning, her eyes darting between the rearview mirror and the GPS. They were in a race against time, with an invisible enemy closing in. As they approached Croft's cabin, a sense of unease settled over them. The place was isolated, surrounded by dense forest. the kind of location where secrets could be buried forever. The cabin itself looked abandoned, windows boarded up, paint peeling. "Are you sure this is the place?" Michael asked, a knot forming in his stomach. "The digital trail ends here," Emily confirmed, her voice barely a whisper. "He either vanished completely, or he's very good at hiding." They approached cautiously. Michael, always the point man in these situations, moved with an almost primal instinct, his senses heightened. He scanned the perimeter for traps, for signs of an ambush. The silence was profound, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves. As Michael reached the front door, he noticed something. A faint, almost imperceptible scratch mark on the doorframe, too deliberate to be accidental. It was a symbol expertly carved, almost hidden by grime. He recognized it from Emily's research, a stylized A with a serpent entwined around it, the hidden emblem of Ethelred Biosolutions, used in their most sensitive clandestine projects. "They were here," Michael breathed, his voice grim. "They found him." Emily's face fell. No, he was our best hope." Just then a faint glint caught Michael's eye from deep within the woods. Too reflective to be natural, he instinctively shoved Emily behind him, pushing her towards the cover of a thick oak tree. "Get down!" he yelled, his voice a guttural command. A sharp crack echoed through the forest, followed by the distinctive thwack of a high-velocity projectile hitting wood. A bullet, meant for Michael, had splintered the doorframe where his head had been moments before. Then a voice, amplified and chillingly calm, emanated from the darkness of the trees. "A valiant effort, Michael. And a predictable one, Ms. Hayes. Dr. Croft proved uncooperative. We anticipated you might seek out his former associates. You see, we're always several steps ahead." It was Thorne. His voice, devoid of emotion, sent a shiver down Emily's spine. They had walked right into a trap. "Now, Michael," Thorne continued, his voice resonating from multiple directions, making it impossible to pinpoint his location. "The 24 hours are almost up. Your choice is clear. Surrender now, and Miss Hayes will be allowed to walk away. Resist, and she will share Dr. Croft's unfortunate fate." Another shot rang out, this one deliberately targeting the ground near Emily's feet, kicking up dirt and leaves. It was a warning, a demonstration of their precision and their intent. Michael felt a cold fury unlike anything he had ever known. They had taken his hope, and now they were threatening the one person who had given his unending existence a flicker of meaning. His desire for death had been replaced by a fierce, unyielding fight for life, for Emily's life. He knew this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about dismantling this organization, about stopping Thorne no matter the cost. He looked at Emily, her eyes wide with terror, but still fixed on him, still full of that quiet defiance. He nodded, a silent promise passing between them. He would not surrender. He would not let them win. "You want me, Thorne?" Michael roared into the darkness, his voice raw, fueled by an ancient rage. "Then come and get me. But know this. You just made the biggest mistake of your miserable life. 'Cause I don't die. And I'm coming for you." He grabbed Emily's hand, pulling her deeper into the dense undergrowth, away from the cabin, towards the unknown. The forest, once a place of quiet solitude, had become a deadly labyrinth. The hunt was on, and Michael, the man who couldn't die, was no longer the prey. He was the predator, and his target was Dr. Eris Thorne and every single person in Ethelred Biosolutions. The game had just shifted, and Michael was ready to play for keeps. The hunt was on, and Michael, the man who couldn't die, was no longer the prey. He was the predator, and his target was Dr. Eris Thorne and every single person in Ethelred Biosolutions. The game had just shifted, and Michael was ready to play for keeps. The world believed Michael was dead, a convenient fiction that became his most potent weapon. He moved through the city like a phantom, unburdened by identity, unhindered by expectations. His face, once recognized, was now merely a reflection that only he could truly see. The hollow ache of his curse remained, a constant companion, sharpening his focus, refining his intent. He didn't seek vengeance in a blaze of glory. He sought a surgical dismantling, a precise extraction of the truth, and a desperate search for the one thing Thorne promised but never delivered: an end. His first move was not against the imposing facade of Ethelred Biosolutions, but against its digital shadow. Michael had spent years in the corporate world, understood the intricate dance of data and finance. He remembered Thorne's meticulous, almost obsessive methods for securing his research, his finances, his very empire. But even the most fortified digital fortress had vulnerabilities, especially when its architect believed himself untouchable. Working from the anonymity of public libraries and forgotten internet cafes, Michael began to probe. He didn't leave a trace, a digital ghost in the machine. He wasn't looking to crash servers or delete files, not yet. He was watching, listening, gathering intelligence. He traced financial transactions, cross-referenced employee profiles, and mapped the intricate web of Ethelred's subsidiaries and shell companies. He discovered a pattern of illicit funding, shadowy investors, and ethically dubious clinical trials conducted in countries far from American oversight. Thorne's empire was built on a foundation of scientific brilliance, yes, but also on a swamp of moral compromise. His focus narrowed to Dr. Eris Thorne himself. Michael knew Thorne's habits, his preferred coffee, his late-night work sessions, the private jet he used for clandestine meetings. He knew the hidden floor in Ethelred's main building, the one supposedly dedicated to future projects, but which Michael suspected housed the true heart of Thorne's most dangerous research, including the very formula that had cursed him. Michael began with subtle disruptions. A critical shipment of lab equipment diverted to a wrong address, causing a week-long delay in a vital project. A seemingly random software glitch that corrupted a non-essential but time-consuming dataset, forcing a team of researchers to redo weeks of work. Minor inconveniences, easily dismissed as human error or technical anomalies. But Michael knew better. He was testing the waters, gauging Ethelred's response, observing the ripple effect of his invisible touch. Dr. Eris Thorne initially was unperturbed. He barked orders, blamed his subordinates, and demanded stricter protocols. He was a man of immense ego, accustomed to absolute control. These petty annoyances were beneath his notice, mere distractions from his grand vision. He saw them as isolated incidents, not as the opening salvos of a calculated assault. But Michael wasn't done. He escalated. Ethelred's quarterly financial reports, usually immaculate, suddenly contained minor discrepancies, small enough to be overlooked by external auditors, but significant enough to cause internal headaches. Confidential emails between Thorne and his R&D director, discussing sensitive project details, began to appear in the inboxes of junior staff, disguised as spam, but containing just enough genuine information to cause whispers and suspicions. No major breaches, no catastrophic leaks, just enough to sow seeds of mistrust and paranoia within the company. The atmosphere at Ethelred Biosolutions began to sour. Employees became wary, looking over their shoulders, wondering if their colleagues were responsible for the growing number of errors. Thorne's executive team, once a picture of cohesion, started to bicker, each blaming the other for the mounting inefficiencies. Production schedules slipped, investor confidence wavered, and the company's stock, once soaring, began a slow, almost imperceptible decline. Michael watched it all, a ghost in the machine, a silent observer of the chaos he meticulously orchestrated. He wasn't fueled by anger, but by a cold, desperate logic. Each disruption was a lever, each piece of leaked information a wedge, designed to pry open Ethelred's secrets, to expose Thorne's vulnerabilities. He needed access not to destroy the company but to find the one thing that mattered, the research, the antidote, the key to his own mortality. He began to focus on Thorne's personal life. The doctor, a man obsessed with his work, had few personal connections, but even he had routines. Michael discovered Thorne's highly secured private server, separate from Ethelred's network, where he stored his most sensitive proprietary research. This was the holy grail, the likely location of the original formula, the experimental data, and perhaps the elusive reversal agent. Breaking into Thorne's private server would be a monumental task, even for a digital phantom like Michael. It wasn't just about code, it was about understanding Thorne's mind, his unique brand of paranoia. Michael knew Thorne would have built a system designed to withstand any conventional attack. So Michael chose an unconventional path. He wouldn't hack it, he would trick it. He leveraged the internal discord he'd already created. He fabricated anonymous internal reports, using carefully extracted pieces of real data, suggesting that a high-ranking executive was attempting to siphon off funds using a loophole in Ethelred's financial system. He made sure these reports landed on Thorne's desk, along with a subtle, almost imperceptible digital breadcrumb trail leading to a seemingly innocuous internal server. Thorn, consumed by his mounting frustrations and convinced of betrayal from within, took the bait. He ordered an immediate, thorough investigation, demanding full access to all internal servers, including the one Michael had subtly highlighted. In doing so, Thorn inadvertently exposed a critical, albeit temporary, vulnerability in his own network's security, a backdoor created for his personal oversight during such internal audits. It was a window of opportunity Michael had meticulously engineered. He moved swiftly, silently through the exposed digital pathways. He bypassed the temporary security measures, burrowed deep into Ethelred's core network, and then with a surge of adrenaline, found the digital bridge to Thorn's private server. The server was a labyrinth of encrypted files, nested directories, and biometric locks. But Michael possessed a unique advantage: intimate knowledge of Thorn's mental architecture. He knew Thorn's ego, his hubris, his tendency to reuse obscure personal details as parts of complex passwords. He spent days, then nights, sifting through digital detritus, piecing together fragments of information, until a pattern emerged. A series of dates, names, even a forgotten childhood pet, all woven into a master encryption key. With a soft, almost inaudible click, the final barrier fell. Michael was in. He found it all. Not just the data on Project Chimera, the original experiment that had granted him his immortality, but also Thorn's personal journal entries, meticulously detailing his contempt for Michael, his glee at having a living specimen, and his increasingly desperate attempts to replicate Michael's condition in others. There were files on subsequent, far more unethical, human trials, the names of other unwitting subjects, and the chilling records of their catastrophic failures, all leading to agonizing deaths. Thorn had not only cursed Michael, but he had continued to inflict similar horrors on countless others, driven by ambition and a complete disregard for human life. But amidst the horrors, Michael found something else: a series of highly theoretical research papers, hidden deep within a subdirectory labeled Project Phoenix. These weren't about creating immortality, they were about reversing it. Thorn, ever the genius, had known that if he could create it, he could also undo it. He had been working on a counteragent, not out of compassion, but out of a desire for complete control. He wanted to be the only one who held the keys to life and death and ultimate power. Michael downloaded everything, every byte of data, every chilling confession, every theoretical pathway to a cure. He copied it to encrypted drives, multiple backups, scattering it across the dark web, ensuring that even if Thorn somehow discovered the breach, the information would be beyond his grasp. As he finished, a new sensation washed over Michael. Not just the cold determination, but a flicker of something akin to hope, fragile but real. He had the information. He had the blueprints to his own freedom. But the cost of that freedom was still unknown, and the danger was far from over. Thorn would soon discover the full extent of the breach, and his rage would be boundless. Michael had opened Pandora's box, and now the true battle was about to begin. He had Thorn's secrets, his vulnerabilities, his very lifeline. The game had truly shifted, and Michael, armed with a newfound purpose and a chilling understanding of his enemy, was ready to deliver the final, devastating blow. He was coming for Thorn, not just for a cure, but for justice, and he would not stop until Ethelred Biosolutions crumbled, and the man who couldn't die could finally find peace. The air crackled with an unspoken promise of reckoning. Michael, a ghost among the living, a man forged in the crucible of endless pain, moved with a terrifying resolve. His target, Ethelred Biosolutions, a sprawling fortress of glass and steel nestled in the heart of a bustling metropolis, a monument to Thorn's twisted ambition. He knew Thorn wouldn't be easily found, nor easily defeated. This wasn't a simple break-in. It was an invasion, a surgical strike aimed at the very heart of the operation that had stolen his life and condemned him to an immortal purgatory. He had spent weeks studying the facility, a meticulous dissection of blueprints acquired through means he preferred not to dwell on, observing security rotations, identifying blind spots, and calculating every variable. He knew the shifts, the access points, the patrol patterns of Thorn's private security detail, ex-military, highly trained, utterly ruthless. But they were just men, and Michael was something else entirely. He was unstoppable. Under the cloak of a moonless night, Michael made his move. He approached from the least guarded side, scaling the sheer, unyielding facade of the building with an impossible grace, each movement precise, silent. The wind whipped around him, a cold whisper against his cheek, but he felt nothing but the burning focus of his mission. He bypassed laser grids, pressure plates, and motion sensors with an almost supernatural intuition, a byproduct of years spent in the shadows, honing senses that had once been merely human. He was no longer just Michael. He was the embodiment of a relentless force, a ghost of vengeance. He breached the executive floor, the heart of Thorne's operations. The corridors were plush, eerily silent, bathed in the soft glow of recessed lighting. This was where the real secrets were kept, where the darkest truths resided. He moved through the labyrinthine halls, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet, his eyes scanning every detail, every door, every potential threat. He knew Thorne's office would be heavily fortified, a sanctuary for the man who believed himself untouchable. And then he saw it, a heavy reinforced steel door, subtly integrated into a wall of polished wood. This wasn't just an office, it was a vault. He could feel the hum of advanced security systems emanating from behind it. Michael smiled, a grim, humorless expression. Thorne was certainly prepared, but he wasn't prepared for Michael. Using a device he'd painstakingly assembled, a small, complex EMP burst generator disguised as a simple communication relay, Michael disabled the immediate electronic locks. There was a faint whirring sound, then a soft click. The door, for all its formidable appearance, yielded. He pushed it open, revealing an inner sanctum bathed in the soft, blue light of multiple monitors. Thorne was there, seated at a vast, curved desk, his back to the door, seemingly engrossed in the data scrolling across his screens. The air in the room was thick with the scent of ozone and something else, something metallic and sterile, like a hospital operating room. "I knew you'd come, Michael," Thorne said, his voice calm, even-toned, without turning around. It was as if he had been expecting him, waiting for this very moment. "Though I admit I expected a bit more fanfare." Michael stepped fully into the room, the door swinging shut silently behind him. "You knew I'd come for a cure," Michael corrected, his voice a low growl. "But I'm here for justice." Thorne finally swiveled his chair, revealing a man who looked remarkably composed, almost serene, despite the gravity of the situation. He was older than Michael remembered, lines etched around his eyes, but his gaze was as sharp and calculating as ever. Justice? A rather quaint notion, wouldn't you say, for a man who defies all natural law? He gestured vaguely at Michael. "You are, after all, my greatest triumph, my magnum opus." "A triumph built on stolen lives," Michael retorted, his fists clenching, the urge to simply tear Thorne apart almost overwhelming. But he needed answers first. He needed the cure. "Necessary sacrifices," Thorne said dismissively, leaning back in his chair, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "For the advancement of mankind. Imagine, Michael, a world free from disease, from death itself. That is the future I am building, and you are the proof of concept." "And the proof of your madness," Michael countered, taking a step closer. "What is it, Thorne? What did you do to me? How do I stop it?" Thorne chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Stop it? Why would you want to stop it? You possess the ultimate gift, Michael. Immortality. Infinite potential. Infinite pain." Michael exploded, his voice echoing in the sterile room. "Every wound, every broken bone, every bullet, I feel it all, Thorne. I just don't die. I'm a living, breathing torture chamber. My wife, Jessica, she watched me die 1,000 times, thinking each was the last. You condemned us both." Thorne's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Jessica? Yes, a regrettable casualty of your unique condition. Her grief was profound. But think of the data we gathered from her reactions. Invaluable." Michael felt a cold, righteous fury spread through him. "You monitored her? You watched her suffer?" "Of course," Thorne said, as if stating the obvious. "Every variable must be accounted for. Your emotional state, your physiological responses to trauma, the psychological impact on those around you. It was all part of the grand design." He steepled his fingers, his gaze unwavering. "The truth, Michael, is far more complex than a simple cure. What you have isn't a disease to be cured, but an altered state of being. Your cellular regeneration is accelerated to an unprecedented degree, constantly repairing, rebuilding, effectively reversing the entropic decay that leads to death. We harnessed a specific sequence of genetic markers, dormant in a very small percentage of the human population, and amplified them using a novel bioluminescent enzyme we synthesized. The enzyme acts as a catalyst, an endless spark, igniting and sustaining the regenerative process. Michael stared, trying to process the flood of information. So there's no off switch? Not a simple one, no, Thorne confirmed. The enzyme is integrated at a fundamental level. It's part of you now. To remove it would be to unravel your very being, likely leading to rapid, catastrophic cellular collapse. In essence, to cure you would be to kill you permanently. The words hit Michael like a physical blow. He had clung to the hope of a cure, a return to a normal life for so long. Now, that hope was being systematically dismantled. There has to be another way, he pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation. There is, Thorne said, a glint entering his eyes. But it's not a cure in the traditional sense. It's a control, a way to modulate the enzyme's activity, to slow it down, to bring you closer to a normal human lifespan, perhaps even allow you to age, to eventually die. But it's a delicate process, one that requires absolute precision and constant monitoring. And it's a process I control. Thorne leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Imagine, Michael, you by my side, the ultimate protector, the ultimate test subject, helping me perfect this process for others. We could change the world together. You could have a semblance of a normal life eventually. All you have to do is cooperate. Michael felt a chill run down his spine. Thorne wasn't offering a solution. He was offering a gilded cage. Cooperate? After everything you've done? After what you've put me through? What about the others? The ones who died, the ones you experimented on? Collateral damage, Thorne said, waving a dismissive hand. The price of progress. But with you, Michael, it doesn't have to be. You're different. You survived. You thrived in your own way. We could make you comfortable. Give you a new identity, a new life away from the prying eyes with Jessica, perhaps, if she were willing to understand the sacrifice. We could even revive her, Michael. Bring her back, cured of her illness, and together you could live out your days, albeit with some adjustments. Michael's blood ran cold. Revive Jessica? What are you talking about? Thorne smiled, a truly chilling expression. You see, Michael, your regenerative capabilities weren't the only breakthrough. We also made incredible strides in cryopreservation and cellular reconstruction. Jessica's body after her passing was preserved. We have her. She's in stasis, awaiting the final stages of our research. A perfect candidate for a new perfected version of the enzyme. She could be like you, Michael. Or if you prefer, we could simply rebuild her, restore her to perfect health, and allow her to live a normal life if you would only assist me. The revelation hit Michael with the force of a physical blow. Jessica wasn't just a memory, she was a hostage. Thorne had her. He had been planning this, manipulating him all along. The ultimate leverage. You monster, Michael whispered, his voice trembling with a mixture of horror and rage. You kept her from me. I kept her safe, Michael, Thorne corrected, his voice hardening. For the right moment. This moment. Now you have a choice. Fight me and risk losing everything, including any hope for Jessica's future. Or join me and together we can reshape humanity itself, and you can have your wife back whole and healthy, perhaps even immortal just like you. The choice presented was a cruel, twisted parody of hope. Michael felt the weight of it, the unimaginable burden. He could see the path Thorne was laying out, a path paved with compromises and unspeakable acts, but at the end of it, Jessica. His Jessica alive. But at what cost? To become Thorne's weapon? To sanction his atrocities? To condemn countless others to the same fate he had endured, or worse? His gaze hardened. Thorne had played his hand. He had revealed the ultimate card. But Michael understood something Thorne never would. True peace wasn't found in eternal life, nor in the endless pursuit of power. It was found in freedom, in justice, and in the love he had for Jessica. A love that would never allow him to become the monster Thorne wanted him to be. You don't understand, Thorne, Michael said, his voice now steady, filled with a terrifying calm. You didn't keep her safe. You made her a pawn. And now you've sealed your own fate. Thorne's smile finally faltered. He saw the fire in Michael's eyes, not of desperation, but of unyielding resolve. You truly would sacrifice her again? I would die 1,000 times, Michael declared, before I let you turn her into another one of your experiments, or use her to control me. This ends now. As Michael took another step forward, a sudden tremor shook the room. Alarms blared, a piercing, insistent wail that cut through the sterile silence. Red emergency lights flashed, bathing the room in an ominous glow. "What have you done?" Thorne demanded, his composure finally cracking. "I didn't come alone," Michael said, a grim satisfaction in his voice. While Thorne had been distracted, gloating, revealing his darkest secrets, Michael's meticulously planned secondary objective had been initiated. A time charge placed deep within the facility's power core, designed not to destroy, but to disrupt, to expose, to throw Ethelred Biosolutions into utter chaos. On one of Thorne's screens, a live feed flickered to life, showing chaos erupting throughout the facility. Security personnel scrambled, lights flickered, and crucial data streams began to fail. A message, plain and stark, flashed across another monitor. "System integrity compromised. Data leak imminent." Thorne slammed his fist on the desk. "You fool! You'll destroy years of research, decades of work, and free every single person you've ever held captive," Michael countered, his gaze fixed on Thorne. "Every secret you've buried will see the light of day. This isn't just about me, Thorne. This is about everyone you've wronged." The battle had truly begun. Not just a physical confrontation, but a war for truth, for liberation, and for the soul of the man who couldn't die. Thorne, his face contorted in a mask of fury, reached under his desk. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a gleaming futuristic weapon, unlike anything Michael had ever seen. It hummed with a dangerous energy. "You may be immortal, Michael," Thorne snarled, rising from his chair, the weapon leveled at Michael's chest. "But I can still make you wish you weren't." The ultimate confrontation was upon them. The fate of Ethelred Biosolutions, the truth about Michael's condition, and the possibility of Jessica's salvation, all hung in the balance, poised on the razor's edge of this final desperate struggle. Michael knew this was it. The moment he had fought for, bled for, and died for countless times. He had come for peace, but it seemed he would have to tear down an empire to find it. The reinforced door to Dr. Eris Thorne's inner sanctum wasn't designed for brute force, but Michael wasn't using brute force. He was using a meticulously calculated sequence of energy pulses, each one a precise, targeted shockwave he'd learned to generate from the very core of his endlessly regenerating being. The metal groaned, then shrieked, finally bursting inward with a metallic roar, showering the pristine, sterile white laboratory with sparks and debris. Thorne was there, just as Michael had known he would be. He stood before a panoramic window overlooking a sprawling subterranean complex, a city of steel and light hidden beneath the earth. He wasn't startled, not truly. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips, a look of serene intellectual triumph. He was an old man, yet his posture was ramrod straight, his eyes sharp and unyielding. "Michael," Thorne said, his voice a calm, almost paternal hum, devoid of fear or surprise. "I knew you would come. It was inevitable. The ultimate variable in my grand equation, finally returning to its origin point." Michael didn't respond with words. He advanced, his every step a testament to the agony and endurance of centuries. His face was a mask of grim determination, his eyes burning with the cold fire of a man who had seen hell countless times and was now ready to drag it back to its source. "You seek an end, don't you?" Thorne continued, turning slowly to face him fully. He gestured around the immaculate lab, filled with humming machinery, glowing screens, and intricate crystalline structures. "This, Michael, is where it all began, and where it will all be perfected." Perfected? Michael's voice was a low growl, raw with repressed fury. "You call this perfection? Endless suffering? A life without purpose, without consequence, without the sweet release of oblivion?" Thorne chuckled, a dry academic sound. "Oh, Michael, you misunderstand. Suffering is merely a catalyst. You are not a curse, you are a miracle. The first of a new lineage. The progenitor of true immortality. My life's work was not to trap you, but to understand you, to replicate you, to elevate humanity beyond its pathetic, fleeting existence." He walked towards a central console, a shimmering holographic display rising from its surface, projecting complex genetic sequences and energy signatures. "You see, Michael, your condition wasn't a random mutation. It was an ancient, dormant gene, awakened by a specific confluence of environmental factors, a rare cosmic alignment centuries ago. I merely found the key to unlock it, to stabilize it, to make it permanent. You were A happy accident. A perfect specimen for observation. Michael felt a surge of cold dread. You mean you didn't create it? You just amplified it. Precisely. Thorn's eyes gleamed. I found the dormant seed, watered it, and watched it blossom into an unbreakable tree. And now I have perfected the method. The Blackwood project wasn't about you specifically, Michael. It was about replicating the mechanism, the data, the genetic mapping, the energy resonance. It's all here. The blueprint for a new form of life. A life without death. Thorn pressed a button, and the holographic display shifted, showing a vast network of facilities, each one a smaller version of the one they were in. Soon, Michael, every human who desires it will be able to shed the shackles of mortality. Imagine. No more disease, no more aging, no more fear of the end. A new golden age, ushered in by Dr. Eris Thorn and the sacrifice of his most unwilling subject. Michael's fists clenched. You call it a sacrifice? You call this a gift? You have no idea what it's like. The memories, the losses, the endless parade of faces you grow to love, only to watch them wither and turn to dust while you remain. A constant, unchanging monument to your own curse. A small price for eternity. Thorn scoffed. Your perspective is limited by your primitive human attachments. You cling to the finite, while I offer the infinite. I don't want your infinite. Michael roared, lunging forward. Before he could reach Thorn, an invisible force field shimmered into existence, throwing him back against the shattered doorframe. He hit the reinforced metal with a sickening crunch, but even as his bones fractured, they began knitting themselves back together. Crude, Michael, Thorn said, shaking his head with an air of disappointment. Did you truly think I would be so unprepared? This chamber is shielded not just from external threats but from you. Your regenerative abilities are fascinating, but they are also predictable. Every move you make, every energy signature you emit, I've logged, analyzed, and countered. Michael pushed himself up, his body already mending. You can counter my attacks, Thorn, but you can't counter my will. I will tear this place down. I will tear you down, and then I will finally be free. Thorn merely smiled. Freedom is a construct. True liberation lies in transcending the limitations of the flesh. And you, Michael, are the living proof of that transcendence. He pointed to a large, pulsating crystalline structure at the heart of the lab, glowing with an ethereal blue light. That, Michael, is the resonance matrix. It's the core of my research. It emits the precise frequency that stabilizes your unique genetic markers, ensuring your continuous regeneration. It's also the central hub for disseminating that energy, and eventually the genetic modifications to my other facilities. Destroy it, Michael whispered, his eyes fixed on the glowing crystal. Destroy that and you destroy the source. Indeed, Thorn said, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. But it is shielded, Michael. Impervious to your crude energy pulses, immune to physical trauma. It is designed to withstand the very forces that define your existence. A cruel smile spread across Thorn's face. And even if you could destroy it, Michael, what makes you think it would bring you the peace you crave? The stabilization is active, yes, but the genetic changes are now ingrained. You are a new species, Michael. You are immortal. This matrix merely ensures its efficiency. Without it, you might still regenerate, perhaps slower, perhaps less perfectly, but you would still be. A cold despair threatened to engulf Michael. Had he come all this way for nothing? Was there truly no escape? But then he remembered Jessica, David, all the faces, all the lives he'd had to leave behind. He remembered the burning desire to simply end. You're lying, Michael said, his voice gaining strength. There's always a way. There has to be. Is there? Thorn challenged, his voice laced with patronizing amusement. Or is that just your human weakness, clinging to hope in the face of absolute truth? Your immortality is a gift, Michael. A gift I intend to bestow upon the world. Michael closed his eyes for a moment, focusing. He had learned so much about his own body, his own energy. He wasn't just regenerating. He was a conduit, a living battery, constantly drawing and expelling energy. The resonance matrix was doing something similar, but on a grander scale, directed and controlled. Maybe he could overload it. Not destroy it with physical force, but with a surge of the very energy it was designed to regulate. He opened his eyes, a new resolve hardening his gaze. You said I'm the ultimate variable. What happens when your variable goes rogue? What happens when the prototype decides to rewrite the blueprint? Thorn's smile faltered slightly. "What are you talking about?" Michael ignored him. He began to channel his energy, not outwards but inwards, then directing it towards the resonance matrix. He felt the familiar hum of his cells accelerating their regeneration, but this time he pushed it further, faster, drawing on the raw, untamed power that made him a living paradox. The air around him began to crackle, the floor beneath his feet vibrating. "Impossible," Thorn muttered, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and dawning fear. "You're destabilizing your own core frequency. You'll tear yourself apart." "Good," Michael grunted, the effort twisting his features. "Maybe that's what I need to do." He felt the pain, a searing agony as his own cellular structure began to fray, to vibrate at an unnatural frequency. But he pushed through it, focusing every ounce of his being on the blue crystal. The resonance matrix began to flicker, its steady glow becoming erratic, pulsing erratically in response to Michael's desperate counter-frequency. Thorn rushed to his console, frantically typing. "Stop it, Michael. You'll destroy everything. Not just yourself, but the entire network. You'll unleash a cascade failure. Let it fail." Michael roared, a primal scream of defiance and longing for peace. The resonance matrix began to groan, a low, ominous thrumming sound that vibrated through the entire lab. Cracks like spiderwebs started to spread across its crystalline surface, glowing with an angry red light. Thorn for the first time looked truly afraid. He knew the destructive potential of his own creation, especially when faced with the untamed power of its source. "No, my life's work, my legacy." With a final agonizing surge, Michael poured every last drop of his tortured existence into the crystal. The resonance matrix shrieked, a sound that tore through the air, and then with a blinding flash of blue and red light, it exploded. The concussive force ripped through the lab, shattering every screen, overturning every console. Michael was thrown backwards, slamming against the far wall. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, unlike anything he had ever felt. Not the fleeting regenerative pain of countless deaths, but a deep fundamental agony that permeated every cell, every nerve. The blue light that had always subtly pulsed within him, the constant hum of regeneration, was gone, replaced by a cold, numbing emptiness. He felt his blood, warm and sticky, pooling beneath him. He felt the crushing weight of his broken bones, and for the first time in centuries, they didn't immediately knit. He looked down at his hand. It was trembling. He saw a deep gash on his arm, and it was bleeding. Really bleeding. Not just for a moment, but steadily, relentlessly. The wound wasn't closing. A ragged, disbelieving laugh bubbled up from his chest, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy. He was dying. Truly, finally dying. He looked across the ruined lab. Thorn lay motionless amidst the debris, caught in the blast, his grand ambitions reduced to rubble. Michael didn't feel triumph, only a quiet, profound relief. His vision began to blur, the edges of the world fading. The pain was still there, but it was receding, replaced by a profound, blissful peace. He saw faces in the fading light. Jessica smiling, her hand in his. David laughing at a shared joke. Countless others, loved and lost, welcoming him. He closed his eyes. The breath caught in his throat, a final shuddering gasp. And then there was nothing. No more pain, no more memories, no more endless cycle. Just silence. And for Michael, the man who couldn't die, it was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. He was finally free. The man who desperately wanted to die finally did.